Welcome to this week's episode of Courageous Leaders Changing the World. Really excited to have this week's guest, Loz Antonenko. Thanks for joining us.
Well done. Honour and a pleasure, mate. Thank you so much. And thank you for not butchering my name. I've been called far worse.
Yeah, I think I have too.
It's okay.
So for the listeners who don't know who are you and what do you do?
I'm the Mojo Mentor. Basically, I help busy, neurodivergent, chaos-driven leaders who are killing it on paper unfuck their habits because they're probably killing themselves slowly. And, you know, it's been a testament to my life. I've spent over $600,000 not dying. So I live and breathe the stuff that I teach. But, you know, I'm a bit of a hype girl. I have really random skills. And if you have an event and you need someone to hype people up, I may or may not be able to just do that on the fly like I did 2 days ago.
Love it. What's some of these random skills that you have?
Sing, dance and act, so triple threat. A couple of days ago, I was at an event that I was speaking at, so I'm a professional speaker, but some dancers didn't show up that were paid in advance. They thought it was the next day. And me not knowing anything about any of this, basically on the spot, put my hand up and volunteered to fix the problem. And what I ended up having to do was pick a song on the fly, completely make up a dance on the spot in front of 150 people and teach 150 people that exact dance over 3.5 minutes. So completely random skills, I tell you, but it saved the beginning of that conference. But you know what? Like, happy to help, here to serve.
Love it. Thrown straight in the deep end for that one. I love it. What do you think are some of those like other random experiences that you've had that you've been just like thrown in the deep end and you've had to, you know, do the courageous thing to be able to get the result that you needed?
Isn't that just a metaphor for life though? You know, isn't life and business just one big, crazy, experimental, expensive personal development course that you didn't know you signed up to? Really? I think specifically, if I was to talk about some of the instances where I had to be courageous and creative in leadership, I've been running businesses since I was 15 years old. I'm 40, I know. But at a very young age, I think I realised I was a leader. I was always a problem solver, and I think inherently noticing the things that weren't quite right and trying to come up with solutions was a big part of my leadership development. Having my first, and I'm not going to say adult business because in the wrong context, that could be taken poorly, but my first big girl business and putting on my pants, that for me spanned from leaving university with an IT degree, being incredibly unwell, diagnosed with multiple autoimmune conditions and on the brink of death, not metaphorically, literally, 40 kilos, pooping blood, can't sugarcoat that. And that was the first time I think I realised that I was courageous, because only in retrospect though, right? I think really leaning back to that person with no idea what I was executing or what my life had in store for me and what the next 20 years would present. Making the decision to not seek employment in a traditional way, straight out of university with a degree that I got on scholarships, and actually deciding to start a proper grown-up business. I think for me, the skills that I had acquired up to that time with my communication and my logical and rational thinking and, you know, my neurodivergence, which I had actually like pushed to the side. I never talked about having ADHD in 1998, being a girl. And it wasn't cool, it wasn't trendy, everyone didn't know anything about it, and I wasn't the disruptive kid. But inherently, all of those skills that I had acquired in terms of coping with all of those expectations turned me and helped foster a culture within my internal, not even self-knowing, but my internal spirit and this drive to continue to strive, poet didn't know it but totally did, to be the person I am, where I am so aligned. And what you see is what you get. In fact, I am told so often, oh my God, from the outside, like you look like such a Barbie. And then people meet me, they're like, oh, like you, like literally this person. I drive a pink car, a hot pink convertible. I dress like this because this is how I feel. And courageous leadership is something that has to be fostered. It's engineered through hardship, through adversity, through challenges, through failing fast, using it as feedback. And every time you fall, it's getting up twice as many times. Does that make sense? Forget what the question was.
Me too. How do you work with your neurodivergence and ADHD tendencies then? How do you channel through that?
Great question, because I've always been like this, right? And it's a superpower. And I speak at the speed of ADHD, so I tell people maybe slow it down. I think the thing is, when you are born in a certain way and you see the world from a certain lens and that's all you know, it's like being born without sight. I have friends that don't have sight and they're like, well, I don't fucking know any different. And you learn to adapt. The biggest struggle for me was always time budgeting, not time management, time budgeting. And that is a very different skill set to learn to master. I don't know about you, but I have side quests all fucking day long. Always come back though. And so the deficit for me, it wasn't attention. It's just I had so much energy to do all these things. I don't work in linear time. I work in parallel time. I've got parallel projects going on all the time. You should see me in the kitchen. People go to my husband, holy shit, what doesn't your wife do? He goes, cook. Oh my God. Honestly, it's like a joke watching me. I've got a fridge open and a door open. I will go back and close it. But for me, the skill has been harnessing that in a way that's in alignment with me. So if there's a task that's of low priority and definitely so misaligned with any level of attention, care, or value system of mine, I delegate it if I can. Delegate it to somebody that I'll pay maybe not as much as I'd earn in that time to do that thing. So I delegate. I've got cleaners at my house right now. Cleaning, housework, yard work, food. I'm a nutritionist. I delegate my friggin' food, dude, because I hate doing it. I love being in my house, doing my stuff, being with my clients, showing up on socials, being able to not even be performative because inherently I am a performative individual. It's not a mask, it's just legit. But making sure that I am always doing things mainly that are in alignment. Sometimes they're not, but we have to find space and program space into our life to make sure that those icky things actually get done, like study. I'm doing accreditation for my nutrition at the moment. It's a pain in the ass. Man, I've extended my study like 4 times. I also have been incredibly unwell, but it's making sure that I am providing space and making them like appointments in my diary that are non-negotiable for me to have to show up for those things, and then having a team of support around you. Whoever they are, whatever they are, they might be AI. Use the tools at your disposal to help you channel the most authentic version of yourself, doing the shit that lights you up, and then get paid handsomely for it. That's what I've learned as an entrepreneur because that's what I am. The challenge for me is just making sure I'm time budgeting. So, things do blow out. So that is a skill that I'm learning to procure more resources for, putting time limits on myself, trying to cut off conversations even though we go down rabbit holes. But time budgeting, I think for a lot of people who are neurodiverse is a challenge. Depends on the level of neurodiversity that you are dealing with. But, I feel like I've mastered it pretty well now. I mean, I teach people to do this, so I am kind of living it and teaching it at the same time.
Yeah, I love that. What do you do to work on finishing things then?
I try not to start things that I know aren't going to be in alignment. I think the old version of me was always starting things because I thought I should be doing it. And, I was shooting all over myself. I had mess everywhere, basically to the point of like shooting incontinence, So I think making sure I ask myself the question, this action that I'm about to take or potentially considering taking, is this in alignment with something that's going to take me closer to the thing that I desire? Because desire and competence, the gap between those is what creates fear, it creates disconnect, and that's misalignment, right? So, changing is this actually a desire or is this an extrinsic force that I've had thrust upon me or it's actually an expectation? Let me ask myself some better questions. And Dr. John Demartini, speaks about the quality of your life is dictated by the quality of your questions. You just got to ask yourself better questions, and then that puts me back on course.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think it's in, can't remember the author's name, but it was in either Effortless or Essentialism. It's like he says, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Absolutely.
What have you recognized in terms of some of the core things that play out for people that have those neurodiverse tendencies and what they kind of face off with in business then?
I think there's 2 parts to that question. I think the first part is like, what is business and why are you going into business? Why are you in business? Now, I don't know about you, but what I find with most people, because I work with business owners, I'm not a business coach. I am a health and fitness coach for business people, right? I do not give business advice. But as somebody that started their first business at 15, right? That's a long time. I'm 40 years old. Most people romanticize about business. And the conversation that they have about going into business is like, I'm going to go into business. It's going to be great. I'm going to have so much time and I'm going to be able to deliver to people and serve, and life is going to be abundant and fruitful. I'm going to have a level of consciousness and all these people around me. And that's the conversation that they have. Okay, you and I both know that is literally the opposite during a point in your business development that you hit. The conversation we need to first have is like, why am I going to business? What is the why? Is there an outcome? What does that look like? Do I have an exit strategy? Is this a business of legacy? Is this a business because I want to buy myself a job? They are two different things. And I think the big conversation people miss, having started, scaled and sold a multi-7-figure business, right, over a 20-year period, I did not realize I needed an exit strategy at the beginning of that. It just happened, okay? But I think the first conversation is, why are you in business? Because maybe you shouldn't have a business. Maybe business is not for you. Maybe if you're romanticizing and pedestaling, let's use that, a business, because you think it's going to buy you a ticket to freedom, life has other plans for you. Because as I said, running a business is the most expensive, lengthy, non-linear personal development course that you've ever invested in, right? The second part of that conversation is neurodiverse people. Neurodiverse people are my favorite type of people. Most of my clients are neurodiverse. I used to say that I worked with neurodiverse business owners. I don't even say that anymore because most people in business are neurodiverse. They're not neurotypical. So why be redundant? I think realizing what your superpowers are and what they're not, working out what your lane is and realizing that you cannot possibly be everything to everyone or do everything. The biggest mistake I made when I first started out in business, straight out of university, and I guess it wasn't a mistake, but I did everything to the point of burning out. I've been hospitalized 3 times from burnout. I burned out 4 times. I learned eventually how to avoid it to the point of hospitalization. But the biggest struggle for a lot of people is there isn't that match of their business. There isn't that match of that romanticized version of reality with what is actually happening in real life. And then you add another layer of complexity, which is neurodivergent thinking. And a lot of the time people become frustrated, and it's not even frustrated because they're not getting results. It's frustration because, nobody understands them. So you have to find your people, and that can take time. We all need people around us and we all need help. Help with an A in it, right? Help. I think when I realized that I needed to employ my first person, that was a huge step for me. I employed a friend of the family. Big no-no. Learnt my lesson hard. Employed another friend of the family. Learnt my lesson hard. The reality is you do need people around you, because if you can just harness the thing that you love and make a business out of it that's successful, that can serve others, that has a legacy and you have an exit from, if that's what you choose, there's no way you can actually fail.
Yeah, I love that. How would you answer that question of why you're in business then?
I don't know how not to be in business. I want a tattoo that says world's worst employee, and I actually found out that my deceased great uncle had a tattoo that said unemployable. Right? It was death before employment or something like that. So it runs in my family. The reason that I'm in business is that I think as an employee working for somebody, and I had 20 jobs between the age, I didn't work when I was at school because I was a very intellectual student. I did all of the things, ADD, obviously. But between the ages of 18 and 21, I had 21 jobs.
Wow.
What the hell, dude? I did everything from working at Macca's, working at Woolies, learning systems and processes, building computers. I used to build websites. I used to code. I have a degree in IT. To doing graphic design, going through people's quality systems and fixing up formatting because it was silly, fixing up document control. I then went and worked for a swim school and did her books and totally fucked her business because I don't have skills in that. But I think through that experiment, because I did start my first business at 15. So I've started a business at school, made thousands of dollars, then gone to university because that's what I was supposed to do, got scholarships, come out, gone, what the fuck, gotten sick. And then, had all these jobs through uni. And then I've gone, actually, like, I can't work I even worked for the government for a period. I worked for a place called the Tracer Unit. It's like teacher relief unit. So, when you got relief teachers who are waiting for a shift, I had to start work at 6 a.m. Oh, I didn't know there was a 6 a.m. And I had to call people at 6 o'clock in the morning, call teachers, and they hated my guts. I'm like, dude, you signed up to this. But I think through that experiment, I realized actually the reason for being in business is I just solve too many problems. And as soon as I start working for someone, I see all the problems and I can't solve them. And so I just need to solve problems in a way that makes sense to me. And I've had many iterations of that over time, but inherently it's actually more of a functional reason that I'm in business. I just suck at following other people's systems and processes. It doesn't mean that they suck, but I find like I'm a heart-shaped peg in a round hole. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
Can't fit.
Yeah.
And that's cool. I just understand that I'll always run businesses for the rest of my life. And beyond.
You've mentioned experiments a few times now. What do you mean by experiments, and what has had you go from how did you think about jobs or businesses before you call them experiments?
Yeah, I think that's the first time I've ever referred to them as experiments. Okay. This is how my brain works. They're experiments only in that, like, I'm trying things on. And I think as a young woman, growing up as a kid, I'm the oldest of three, and my dad was in the military. My mum was a nurse. So I've got a really militarized masculine energy and a really empathetic feminine energy. It's very conflicting. I had a very conflicting childhood. I was verbally abused, physically abused by my father. But loved him so dearly, right? He was the apple of my eye. I remember I was the apple of his eye, rather. I remember at school we had like a show and tell like hero, and I'm like, this is my dad. He's awesome. And my dad left the military to pursue consultancy, so he started working for himself. And that for me was really my first foray into, this is what running a business looks like. Like my dad would be like, I'm claiming this, I'm claiming that. We go on holidays, I'm claiming this ship. I'm like, what's this claiming? Gave me Rich Dad, Poor Dad, by Robert Kiyosaki when I'm 14 years old, reading the cash flow quadrant, all of these random things that I'm exposed to as a child. And it's funny because at no point was I referring to this as an experiment, but I'm looking at this as a concept, conceptually, and going, running a business is pretty freaking cool. Meanwhile, my mum, who's a slave to golden handcuffs in a job that's killing her slowly, shift worker, nurse, watching her go and be the breadwinner for my family, and then has studied while we're kids, able to afford to send us all to private schools, buy us all our first cars. I come from a very privileged position, but only because my parents worked very hard. It's interesting though, because my dad had always encouraged me to have my own endeavors. He was the reason I started my first business at 15. And it wasn't even that it was an experiment, but I think that's what it was. My first business, if it's okay to share.
Yeah, go for it.
At our school, I was at a private school, co-educational school, went from prep to year 12. We were all allowed our own school bags until the year 2000. And in the year 2000, the school's like, we have to have mandatory school branded bags. And so what was happening is kids were picking up other kids' bags, taking them home. Parents got the shits. So my dad's like, you just need to have tags on bags. I'm like, bag tags. That rhymes. Love rhyming. Love alliteration, assonance. My God. Anyway, so I ended up getting permission from the principal, which is a huge deal, right, to use the school logo. And what I did is at home in Microsoft Word, love Microsoft Word, created a template. And in that template, I had the school logo. So I split the page up into like 9 different little business card size things. And then I had the school logo on every one and a space for someone's name, kid's name, and their phone number. And so my dad had all of his equipment at home because he's working for himself. So he has a friggin' home office. And so in my spare periods, because I'm in year 10, so I have spare periods, I went around to classrooms and was like, do you guys have a problem like picking up other kids' bags? Problem, solution. I can solve that for you. It's school approved. And so I made thousands of dollars. So I'd go around and get kids' numbers with permission from their parents, collected $1.50 per bag tag. At a massive school, made a lot of money. And then what I'd do is I'd collect names, phone numbers, collect money. I'd go home, data entry, pain in the ass. You can automate that now. But I would then put people's names and their phone number on those things, print them out individually, use a guillotine, cut them up, put them in individual bloody business-size laminating pouches, laminate the shit out of them, punch a hole in them, stick on a zip tag, next day, delivery. All right? Cheap, quick, easy. Problem solved. I made heaps of money out of that, but it was an experiment. How the fuck would I know if that was going to work? But it did, and that paid my way through high school, which is why I didn't need a job, right? I was also building computers on the side, tutoring, and I've always created, solutions to problems. But inherently it's an experiment because with experiments, there's ingredients, a methodology, an outcome, and then you need a premise. You need to kind of understand why it is that you're doing it in the first place. You can't just go into an experiment and put shit together because you probably explode something and, maim your face. So you've got to have a thesis. You've got to have an idea about what you think is going to happen. But there's still a methodology. And I think IT taught me that because with IT, it's about logic and syntax. It's got to make sense. You got to do things in the right order of operation. And that's how coding works. If then that. And I think when I look at my life and even as a coach in the health and fitness space, the reason I've been so successful is that's actually how I coach my clients through that lens. It's like everyone's running an experiment, but you're kind of hedging, the bet, you know what you're going to bet on, you know kind of what's going to work. It doesn't mean it works every time and there are variances and there are variables and there are outliers in data if you're going to do a scatter plot. But ultimately, it's all one big experiment. And that is business, right? But you can still harm minimize and risk minimize if you are looking at things through a lens of gratitude and alignment.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I was thinking about it as you're sharing, the energetic frequency of an experiment versus a test. And a lot of people, when they see business as a test, then they see it as pass fail, and it creates this energetic frequency where they start to take it very personally. That means if they succeed, then they ride the high, but then when they fail, then they ride the down, and it creates this negative association with how they respond to business by seeing it as a test. And then they then personalize it even more by saying whether I got this right or wrong. So I'm either right or wrong, and it creates this entire potential for downward spiral. That's why when you said experiment consistently, I was like, oh, that's an interesting
reason there.
Yeah, it's just how my brain works too.
Understand. Yeah, but experiments have multiple ways that you can get to the same outcome, right? With a test, it's pass, fail. And I think creating that spectrum of opportunity in the quantum field of possibility, that's where experimentation is really useful because that fucking didn't work. Let me try it this way. And you can tweak the formula, you can tweak the ingredients, you can even change the thesis. You can change the whole premise of the bloody thing if you want to. And that's why business is so beautiful because business can be whatever the fuck you want. When people hire me to speak at conferences as a wellness speaker, I am the most out-of-the-box wellness speaker they've ever had. And it works because I'm constantly experimenting with different things. And I think because I'm coming from a different space and I'm explaining it in a different way where it's so left of field, people are like, this shit actually makes more sense to me. It doesn't mean it's always like that. It's never linear. No experiments, really. When we go into them, we don't really know what we're going to get.
Yeah.
Welcome to cooking. This is why I don't cook.
I love that. What was that transition that went through? You're selling bag tags, you get into IT, and then you move into wellness. What was the transition from going from IT and however many iterations it went through in between that and getting into wellness then?
So I was a kid at school that was kind of good at everything. I'm not tooting my own horn, but it's very, very taxing, right? Your body keeps the score. And I'm going to come back to that multiple times through this conversation because it's a big part of my life. But at school, it was like music. I did drama. I got the friggin' literature award. I was captain of sports teams. I was the lead in all the musical theatre productions. I got a really high score out of school and I could literally nearly do everything. But I got an opportunity. I got the IT award at school. I was one of 2 girls in my cohort and I got a higher score than all the boys because I actually fucking listened, right? But then when I went to university on an IT scholarship, I remember sitting in the auditorium. There was 400 of us because this is in the early 2000s when it was really on trend. And I was one of 4 women in my cohort and I just did not fit. I was too extroverted. I was too much of a creative thinker. And after my first year in IT, I paused that and changed degrees. I changed degrees 4 times in 5 years. Could not make my mind up. And unfortunately, when you have really broad, weird skills and lots of interests, it's difficult to find the thing. Okay, and I've realized there isn't the thing. There are multiple things that light me up now, but I'm a lot older than I was. After changing degrees 2 times, I ended up getting incredibly unwell. Now, I'd met the man, the love of my life, who would become my first husband, whose last name I now share. And I met him when I was still at uni and I hadn't gotten sick yet. But I ended up getting incredibly unwell. I was pooping blood, as I mentioned before. I got down to 40 kilos. I literally nearly died. Nobody knew what was wrong with me. I was going from doctor to doctor, being pushed and pulled from one medical specialist to the other. And then they finally worked out I had a condition called ulcerative colitis. Now, ulcerative colitis is a form of inflammatory bowel disease, not too dissimilar to Crohn's disease. Most people are a bit more aware of that. But you get ulcers in your bowel. Where I get it, it's my lower bowel. It bleeds, it hurts, it sucks. Right? The solution to that problem was a slap on the bum out of hospital. Here's a bunch of steroid medications and a whole heap of other shit. Maybe follow a gluten-free diet. It might be less inflammatory. Sent me home. 6 months go by and I've gained 26.5 kilos, hate myself. Now I've been diagnosed with more acronyms, PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PCOS, polycystic ovary fucking syndrome. Like, I've accumulated more medical acronyms than anybody should have to remember. I'm like a medical encyclopedia, right? People don't know that when they see me. This is why I do what I do. I hadn't found health and fitness yet. I don't give a shit about my health and fitness at this point. Brian, my first husband, super fit. When I met him, his biceps were bigger than my entire leg, right? Massive, strong, Chinese, Ukrainian, gorgeous, Eurasian guy, really into his health and fitness. I was not. I took time off university, got my health in check, much to my dad's disgust. He did not want me to take time off university. And I ended up changing degrees. So what happened is while I was having my break, the university changed the way they ruled passes and fails. It's funny, when I started uni, I was a straight 7 student. As I was getting sick, towards me deferring my study for nearly a year, my grades slipped significantly. And you can actually see me starting to slip. And the mental tax that had on me was phenomenal. I believe that is actually what led to me getting so sick so quickly, right? Autoimmune diseases are typically caused from a dysregulation of parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. Now, I didn't fucking know this, as if I'm going to know that. I don't give a shit. But I listened to my doctors and I did the thing and I started getting better. But I gained all this weight and I started getting depressed. So I then was on antidepressants and all of these things. And then I was told that that was my normal. Like, you're not shitting blood, get over it. Literally, that's basically what I'm getting told, right? So for 8 years, I lived in this body that I hated, going through the motions of uni. I changed degrees and ended up in humanities. And at the end of my degree in 2007, I actually was offered a job by my lecturer at the Office for Women Writing Feminist Policy. Random as fuck. I also applied for a cadetship at the ACCC. But then I realised I was still very unwell. I was tired. I had chronic fatigue diagnosed, fibromyalgia diagnosed, which I still have bouts of now. And I went, I can't work for someone else. I cannot work for someone else. I need to work for myself. And so my dad, who was doing quality assurance at the time, did some quality assurance for this mob that did mobility equipment, the most unsexy thing you would ever imagine. Shit that you don't think of until you need it. And so with my dad, out of uni, I opened up a business in Ipswich selling mobility and assistive technology equipment, right? So I did everything except for fixing, because he used to be an airframe engineer in the military. And so he would do all the fixing. So he could do electrical, mechanical shit. And it was great. I ended up marrying Brian the 10th of the 10th, 2010. We had this successful business. And on the outside, everything was going swimmingly. Had this successful business. We doubled and doubled and doubled. We were skyrocketing, linear success after success. We had a storefront, a showroom. We had to keep moving because we were growing and there were no competitors in the area. Now, meanwhile, I was doing some Pilates, pretending to do Pilates at the gym. I had back pain because I was overweight. I didn't like the way my body felt. I started teaching Zumba because it was fun, but I was really tired. But I wasn't really fit or healthy. In 2014, this was the beginning of the change to fitness and health. Now, this shit found me. I wasn't searching for it. In 2014, in the middle of the day, in the middle of the shop, my dad backhanded me across the face. It was over a bedpan not having a price on it. Now, at this point in my life, my dad had been having an affair, which I had discovered. I was about to blow up my entire family. Now, I know he was projecting his inadequacies on me and I was the scapegoat, but my dad blamed me for that. Now, he doesn't know he caused $15,000 worth of damage to my jaw. He does not know that. My dad and I have not spoken since 2014. My dad then made my life hell. He accused me of all sorts of things, got the police involved. They were not true. It all got dropped. But he caused me so much emotional turmoil. 6 months after that, my husband Brian committed suicide 2 days after my 31st birthday. And then a month after that, my grandpa died. So the 3 biggest paternal male models in my life, and I was a very yin energy, right? Yang energy, I should say, very yang energy. They were gone. I didn't know who I was and I lost myself. Now, my husband's suicide was the best thing that ever happened to me because it actually forced me to realize that where my life was going and this metric of success that I had been procuring on the externality of my life, if my life was going to continue to go there, it would just end nowhere. And it forced me into a place of despair, and out of desperation, I had to find a habit to get me through because I was very performative with my grief. I would still show up to work. I had a business to run. I had to employ my first person. That was my friend. Big mistake. But I was in such a state of lack and loss and grief and pain and suffering. I didn't have a support system. I had to just grasp at straws and I'd just find people. They weren't the right people, right? And it's interesting. I had a psychologist through all of this and she said, look, all of these things. Oh, so and then also my husband's family then took me to court. They wanted his entire estate. My psychologist said, you have to find something. This shit that you're dealing with is going to take time. It's going to take time to get through this. You need to go find something that you can do that's going to make you feel like you have progress. So I started going to the gym. This is how this version of me started. It didn't come from a place of need. It came from want. It came from a place of need. And so I went to the gym half an hour before closing time every night before it was 24/7. I hopped on a treadmill and just walked. And I wasn't going to look at anybody. And it's funny because I reflect fondly on that person, this person who was insecure, who had no idea of purpose, direction, nothing. But I did because it was step by step and breath by breath. I was finding my path to where I am, right? And one day, this guy in the gym came up to me, old volunteer. He'd been there for 40 years, big burly guy from Yorkshire. He's friends with Brian. And he invited me to learn to lift weights. And I remember looking down at the people lifting weights at 8:30 on a weeknight and they're Malpal style. I'm like, fuck that, I don't want to look like that. He's like, you can't. You don't have those hormones. You'd have to inject yourself with shit. I'm like, okay, fair. Started lifting weights. And it's funny because I had no fucking idea what I was doing. Literally, no idea. But 2 kilo dumbbell bicep curl center, 3 kilo dumbbell bicep curls, 4, 5, 6, made my way down the stack, made my way up to the big person stack. And it's funny because in 6 months of that, not only was I physically transforming, I was mentally feeling capable and confident, right? I've been achieving things outside of business, outside of life for me, personally. But I was chatting to these men in the gym, these Malpal style guys, and I was like, fuck, they're having some really interesting conversations. We're talking about goals. What the fuck is that? Personal development, Tony Robbins, walking on hot coals, reading books, downloading apps, all these things, talking about nutrition, talking about getting fit and feeling good. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this? This world, I'd never been in this space. Even though I started a business at 15, I never considered myself somebody that had goals. Do you know what I mean? My goal was a Louis Vuitton handbag. What the fuck, right? And by 6 months after Brian's death, so September 2016, I'm 31 years old. I decided to do something really bold and brave and decided to set my goals and intentions on doing a bodybuilding show. And I think you and I share that, right? And
what year was that?
2016.
I would have been bodybuilding at the exact same time.
Yep. 2016 ICN Brisbane.
Yeah.
Right? That's where I was.
At Sleeman?
Correct.
Yeah, I would have been there.
That's where I think I know you from, somewhere in there.
There you go. Hey.
Anyway, yeah, I don't forget people. And it's interesting, I had all these expectations on myself and I hired this coach and I got myself prepped. And I didn't even get like as if I'm going to fucking get a call out. Like I failed miserably in my eyes and I was so angry at myself and I was so angry at him. And it's funny because my coach looked like Brian. It was just a weird associative thing that I had. Anyway, met another guy, got married, dickhead me did 13 shows in 14 months, right? ADHD, was like, fuck, I'm in condition, going to keep going, got a new coach. And it's funny because I was so addicted to this performative version of reality. And in the meantime, like I'm hiring people in my business and all of these things are looking there, but I'm literally just falling apart at the seams. My autoimmune diseases kicked back up. I got really sick. I was pooping blood. I was going to do 14 shows, not intentionally in 14 months, but the last bit of advice I got, I remember being with my coach who was a pro in the federation I was competing with. And I wanted to have a glass of wine because I was like I was counting every calorie in, every calorie spent. Like I was like just controlling everything. My life was just this big control. And I sort of really want a glass of wine. She said, babe, why don't you think about snorting cocaine because there's no carbs in it? I was like, fuck, what am I in? What is this? What is this ecosystem of people that I think are supporting me that are actually not, right? And there was this mic drop moment the night before that last show. That wasn't the reason I stopped though. What ended up happening is that happened and I got sick. And the guy that I married, which is my husband now, Michael, he's 15 years my senior. I'm GMAR to a 10-year-old also, bs.com. I remember I was shooting every weekend. I was content creating. I had 100,000 followers on Instagram. Like, I had like this life and everyone was sponsoring me. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Are you making money out of this shit? No, you're killing yourself. Like I was so sick and then everything got worse and then I had to stop. Meanwhile, I found out I had a brain tumor. Meanwhile, I found out I had a hole in my heart. I had to get those fixed. And then I pivoted and I realized, why am I doing this? Why am I actually doing this? There's got to be a better way to this version of myself on the outside than this experiment of getting there. And so I changed the inputs. And that's when I found fitness properly. So I then studied. I was like, fuck, I've got to be a better coach than the coaches before me. And so then I became a personal trainer in my 30s. Then I realized there was lots of gaps in my knowledge, can't help myself. Then I studied. I've got 13 qualifications. I don't know what it's about 13. Me and 13, right? Unlucky number, lucky for me. But basically I spent the next several years acquiring, procuring knowledge to help myself, not for any intention of becoming somebody in that space, right? As a fitness and health expert who gets quoted in magazines on TV, that was not the intention. But organically, this alignment with self and purpose started to manifest in my life. I'm like, fuck, actually, this stuff's super interesting. And then people started commenting and noticing and be like, fuck, how'd you do that? How'd you go from that person? Like, how did you do that? And then I broke down my methodology as I do because that's how I think. I'm like, shit, I could actually teach this shit. And then I created methodologies, intellectual property. The healthy habit hierarchy is one of them. The handbrake habits is another. And then I turned it into a book and now that's literally all I do. Very convoluted answer to your question. But I think that warranted the backstory because I have two brain tumours now. I literally have two brain tumours in my brain growing. I've called them Barry and Sheila. The first one was called Steve. But I've had 3 brain tumours in 10 years. Now, they're not killing me, but they've certainly made my life very challenging. My immune system's cooked. As I said about 10 minutes ago, your body keeps the score. And my body right now is unpacking the score of decades upon decades of stress, turmoil, and all of that. Now, that mobility business, I sold it in September 2024. The time was right. I probably should have sold it earlier, but it enabled me financially and energetically to then completely immerse myself in the stuff that I do today.
I love that. Thanks for taking us on the full journey. Gives us a deeper understanding of all of the things that, have occurred and all of the things that you're dealing with. How do you tolerate all of those experiences from everything that you've been through all of that? You've got ongoing brain tumors, you've got all of the things that have occurred throughout all of that. How do you continue to show up even with all of the circumstances that you faced off with?
Toleration is not the word I'd use, it's accept. And being at peace with that. And I think for a really long time, Cody, I just resisted and pushed and pushed and pushed, hustled harder, grinded more, and I think that's the mistake, right? That's the lesson learned is that I've realized that I'm here just to live that journey for other people, to be that beacon of hope. And like, you're not dealt anything you can't handle. Totally believe that, right? I can handle this shit. And every time something difficult comes up in my life, I reflect on the things that I've done before. I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in 2014, not knowing I had a hole in my heart. I should have died. I was so sick. I was so fucking sick. Nobody believed, even my porter's like, how the fuck did that chick make it? My cardiologist, when I found out I had a hole in my heart years later, was like, how are you not dead? And I'm like, well, clearly I'm good. I've been told by many doctors I should be in a wheelchair by now. I have a condition called ankylosing spondylitis. In 2020, I could not walk at all for 10 months. I have to take it in my stride, pardon the pun. What the fuck are you supposed to do? I show up for myself on a daily basis, and I think this is where this catapults me to what it is that I do, because what I've realized is that humans innately have this idea that the bigger and more complex the solution, the more profound the transformation. And we're welded to this over-the-top version of success. And so what do? We do the personal development course. We walk on hot coals. We download the book. We read, we read all of the things. We have the app. We surround ourselves with people and we tell everybody, this is the fucking next thing that I'm going to do. And like, we're addicted to this idea that everything has to be big and bold, but we're overlooking the fundamentals of the shit that we're doing every single day in our lives, how we eat, how we breathe, what our sleep's like, how much we hydrate, and how much we move and how we move, right? There's 5 things: eat, breathe, sleep, move, hydrate. I've coined this term handbrake habits, right? Because these things act as handbrakes on our lives. And most of us are driving around with all these 5 things, these handbrakes locked on because we're not doing them properly. But then we're seeking these external ways to try and improve the quality of our lives. Fucking come back to the basic shit. And that's the penny drop for me, is that I realize in my moments of assimilation with my circumstances, in my moments of acceptance, what I was actually focusing on was those 5 unsexy fucking things. And those are the things that get me through every single day, right? When I'm at my worst, and there are days when I am fucked, not even kidding. I'm in a band. I travel, I tour. I'm a professional speaker. I travel, I tour. I'm in time zone changes, right? I'm giving all, okay? I show up as I am. Also, I have like this energy shifts, right? So then I have to give myself time to rest and nurture. But I always do the basics. Every day I show up with those non-negotiables. I always make sure that I'm eating well, prioritizing protein as best as I can considering the circumstances. On a plane, maybe not as easy. I'm breathing effectively. I take breaks. I'm a breathing instructor. I'm a functional breathing instructor. I'm always making sure I'm using breath, because breath is the big elephant in the room nobody's talking about, a very underused tool. I make sure I'm sleeping. Like my sleep, I track my sleep. I've spent a lot of money getting good sleep. I have a sleep disorder, right? And I'm still focusing on my sleep. I'm making sure that I'm hydrating effectively. I drink like 4 to 6 liters of water a day. I talk so much. I lose so much hydration as I talk. But I'm making sure I'm doing that. Today I've had 3 coffees. Exceptional day. I've had multiple things to do today. But tomorrow I'll have none. I still drink alcohol sometimes, but in moderation. I understand where that fits. And then finally, moving mindfully. I move mindfully every day. It may not look the same. I may not lift as heavy today as I did yesterday, but I'm being very diverse because those are the key to longevity. Working in the mobility equipment industry for nearly 20 years, every day I sold 2 items: bottom wipers and elastic shoelaces. People are like, what the fuck are those things? Bottom wiper. Your mobility is so fucked either from being too big or not focusing on being able to move that you can't actually reach your ass. You need a bottom wiper. It's an extension on your grip. Sold those every day. Elastic shoelaces. You are so immobile that you can't actually reach your shoes to tie up your shoelaces. You just have to stretch them open, right? Those 2 things, seemingly insignificant, change my perspective on longevity. What's the point in living a long fucking time if you can't do functional shit? So for me, it's about function. So when I'm doing all of these things, I actually bring myself back to that, and that is what keeps me equilibrated, handbrake habits. And if more of us focused on just achieving good health, so many people just try to jump to optimum health and they do these crazy 12-week challenges and all this stuff. Like, just make it good enough, because 9 out of 10 deaths in Australia are associated with chronic disease, and most of these could be eradicated if we all just looked after ourselves a little bit better. And if someone like me, who's super fucked up, who has like bad genes and complex health issues, if someone like me can go from stuck to fucking unstoppable, the average person can at least get themselves unstuck. Fair?
What would you say to someone who's resisting? Like they're in that mentality of, you know, it has to be this big thing. Because, you know, I face off with this as well. Like we have like the transformational arm to our business, and, you know, I'm often in two minds around it, where it's like, yes, there's power in that, and often it's just like you just got to show up exactly where you're at. You don't need to go through this big, huge fucking thing. It's just show up exactly where you're at, create the foundations, and then go from there. And it's like this dance between these two things where people become so addicted to the big cathartic thing. I even when I was speaking at Mind Valley in Estonia, the name of my talk was Personal Development Junkies Anonymous, because it's such a thing. It's like so many people are just like looking for the next hit rather than actually like literally just showing up. And you know, you look at people like Hormozy, it's like, you know, fuck your feelings, all of those things, which is like one extreme of it, of just showing up exactly where you're at. And it's like finding what that balance is for those things. So I think that's my next question for you. It's like, how do you find that balance between those things of like doing the deep inner work, but also just like showing up where you're at and developing more of a foundation?
I think aspirationally, doing the deep work is where we need to go. You cannot fucking do the deep work. You can't think your way to a better life if you've had 4 hours of sleep, you've had fucking 1 glass of water, you haven't even got off your ass today, and so you're sitting like a prawn and you're breathing so shallowly, you're actually basically hyperventilating. You're probably caffeinated up to the fucking eyeballs, and then you haven't even considered what you put in your mouth because you've probably actually forgotten to eat since dinner yesterday. And so my question is like, start with the basics and then start to think about the more deep work, because, you know, how can you expect to show up to battle when you're not even fucking prepared? You literally just walked out onto the battlefield in your fucking undies. Do you know what I mean? You haven't done anything. You haven't trained. You know, how can you expect to perform and show up for yourself? And this is the thing that I teach people, right? Happy to take people on a transformational journey. Not my jam. I love doing it myself. That's not my wheelhouse. Even though I could do it, it's not my lane, right? Basics first, right? And I think that when you do the basics first, the transformation is so damn more liberating, because you actually get a chance to unlock that shit. Trying to have a big vision with brain fog is functionally fucked, right? Yes, Hormozy, he's basically like an algorithm. He is like an app. And look, I love Alex Hormozy, do not get me wrong, but he is so autistic at times. He just like says shit, I'm like, right, real life, right? We've got to find things that fit for real life. And if you are following the methodology to the T of someone else, it's never going to fit, because you are you. I am I. And what's in you is in me, and what's in me is with you, and Ubuntu, right? All of those things. But also choose, pick and borrow. Like nothing I teach is new. It's the way that I assemble it that's different. And it's so, when people hear me speak and they read my books and they're like, reading the thing, they're like, what? That's so easy. Like, why did you make it sound easy? I'm like, it actually is that fucking easy. What's hard is making habits stick, because most of us don't do the thing long enough for them to be of a benefit to our lives. And so we keep driving around with this proverbial handbrake on, right? But like, why jump from stuck to unstoppable? Just take the leap to unstuck first, and then you can do the work. And you know what? If most people got unstuck, the world would be a way better place. And then people who want to do the transformational stuff can totally do that. But this is where I think a lot of this personal development shit misses it, right? Like, I've done so much. I spent so much money and time investing in all these personal development things. But the things that got me the most unstuck was those 5 basic fucking human habits. And then the other shit made more sense. That's where it ties. Everyone needs me in their personal development course.
Love it. What's been, you know, as we start to wrap up, what's been something that you've faced off with recently that has required more courage from you in your life?
2025 for me was an absolute shit show, literally and figuratively. At the end of 2024, I sold my big girl business, right? Exited from a multi-7-figure business. But I had not dealt with the stress that had accumulated in my body at that time. 3 weeks after selling that business, I had something called a microbiota fecal transplant. Okay, so I had someone else's shit put in my gut. I got a whole new gut, cost me $20,000. Went to Sydney, went to one of the best places in the world. That was an epic failure. After the 20 grand, I had to then go home and do infusions. I had frozen shit in my freezer. People come over for a party like, what is this? Is this chocolate sauce? I'm like, it is absolutely not. Please do not, no. And it was painful and it was taxing. And that has been a complete failure. I have microbiome tests to show you. I have lost full species of bacteria. I cannot eat red meat. Absolutely, I don't even have bacteria that can break it down. Now, the problem for me is that I had anticipated that after selling my big business and the catharsis of that, oh my God, I've done this huge thing, I've made all this money. Thing number one is that I was going to pay a lot of tax. And so I then had to not take the fruits of my sale for 14 months. I had to delay that for 14 months. And then there was some tax exemptions that we could take advantage of, my husband and I. But for a whole last year, I had no financial resources to put into my business that I thought I was going to have. And my body was fucked. I also found out at Christmas in 2024 that I had these 2 brain tumors. One is on my pituitary gland, which affects my human growth hormone. The other one's my pineal gland, which affects my ability to produce melatonin. So my sleep is fucked, okay? That was my entire last year. Biggest pivot of my career though, because I had to. I can't, therefore I must. I was at a point in my life where I was like, oh, fuck, I have all this time and space. I am so fucking sick. I need to replace my income from the income that I've lost from that business and the income that I can't get that's been delayed gratification. And last year I went all in into my coaching. I developed all these programs, and it's interesting because I replaced my income and doubled it, like just because I was aligned. And it's funny because I reflect on last year, and even though last year I've had COVID 10 times, like what the fuck? I've had COVID 10 fucking times. My body has been an absolute wreck. But last year, I actually hit rock bottom with my body. I was sick more times than I was well because I have no immune system. And so that's been the biggest challenge so far. And it's interesting moving into this year. I was like, yeah, 2026, fucking boom, we're going to Japan. I literally got influenza A between Christmas and New Year last year and then caught COVID while I had it and then went to Japan. And then I had a 60-degree temperature swing. So it hasn't started the way that I anticipated, but it's okay. Because you know what? I keep growing, I keep evolving, I keep experimenting, and I keep pivoting. And this year is going to be amazing. And no matter what happens with my body, there's always a reason to keep going. Because I can tell a great story. And I use everything that happens to me as a story. I wrote another book while I had COVID. I wrote a whole book over Christmas. It's called Quit Feeling Shit. And it talks about how I've spent over $600,000 in 20 years not dying. And it's teaching people about the handbrake habits and all of the mistakes I made. I have another book called Get the Fuck Unstuck. But it's a little bit different. This is a really personal book because most people would never spend that much money. And I think for me, that's been one of the biggest challenges I face. And you know what? I'm going to face more challenges down the track. And it's not about the competition of bigger or smaller. It's just life. And the spiciness and the juiciness and the gloriness and the glitteriness and the rainbowness of life happens between the ideas that we have and the path that we're on. Because it is all about those challenges and those opportunities to learn and grow, not for ourselves, but for the sentient beings that we surround ourselves with.
I love that. I think that's the perfect thing to wrap up on. What's the best way for people to be able to find you? Come
find me at lozlife.com. But if you just put my name anywhere in the internet, you don't even know how to spell it, that's cool. Loz, Anton, Google and the algorithm of your social platform will fill in the rest. And if this is getting filmed with a video, if you see my face like this, it's not photoshopped. That is my real face. But you can find me anywhere. Love to have a chat. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure. Thank you for letting me share and holding space.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been fun.